Ever just scroll through the news and think, whoa, things are changing? Like, the whole media landscape's gone wild, right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we're wading through this sea of voices now. Big-time news, independent podcasts like us. Which brings us to today's deep dive, The Amber May Show.
Intriguing choice.
Yeah, she went from mainstream media darling to, well, going totally solo. So we're digging into why she made that leap.
Getting into the motivations, not just taking sides. I like it.
Right. It's not about whether she's right or wrong, but why she felt the need to go independent. What's the story there? And from what we've gathered, she didn't just start out in her basement with a microphone.
Oh, absolutely not. Our sources point to a pretty extensive background in broadcasting. She was practically a familiar face.
Which makes it even more interesting, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. The shift is what's fascinating. And she's definitely not holding back on criticism of her former world. I mean, the excerpts we've got use terms like sold out to describe mainstream media.
Whoa. Sold out. That's pointed.
Yeah, pretty strong language,
Yeah.
which suggests a pretty significant shift in her viewpoint.
And then there's the phrase that kept popping up, media industrial complex.
Yes, that one gets thrown around a lot.
It does, but honestly, I'm not always sure I get it. What's the actual meaning behind it?
Right. It's not just about big media companies existing. It's the idea that a select few entities hold all the power when it comes to controlling the narrative. And the implication is that their motives, not always squeaky clean.
Okay, so we're talking hidden agendas, profit over truth, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Whether you buy into that whole argument is a different deep dive for another day. But it's essential for understanding where Amber May is coming from. It's basically the foundation of her entire platform.
She sees herself as the alternative then. And one phrase that really stood out from the research was news from the front lines. But how does that even work when you're not a giant news organization? How do you get those frontline stories?
That's where things get really interesting and potentially a bit messy. Think about those citizen journalists during the Arab Spring, for example.
Oh, right.
They were literally on the front lines, getting the news out that traditional media either couldn't or wouldn't touch.
And that was huge. Changed the whole game.
Absolutely. But, and this is a big but, there's always a flip side. Remember that Coney 2012 documentary?
How could I forget?
Went super viral, everyone was talking about it, but turned out a lot of it was inaccurate or misleading.
Yeah, not great.
And that's the inherent risk with this front lines approach to reporting. Often there's less fact-checking, more potential for biases to slip through the cracks.
It's like anyone can be a reporter now, which is exciting in a way, but also kind of terrifying. Makes you wonder, what pushed Amber May that far? Was it one specific event, or was it more like a slow burn, you know, a gradual disillusionment?
Right. What was the breaking point? We may never know the full story there.
Because for those of us listening, I mean, it's a valid question. How do we figure out who to trust for information these days? It's overwhelming. I mean, I fell for that whole thing about a town electing a cat as mayor.
You and half the internet.
Right. But it turned out to be totally fake.
It happens to the best of us.
It does. So this isn't just about Amber May. It's about the whole wild world of information. Any advice on navigating this crazy landscape?
Honestly, stay curious. Don't just read headlines. Dig a little deeper. Figure out who's saying it, why they might be saying it, and who stands to gain from it. Check multiple sources with different perspectives. Get the full picture.
Don't just stay in your own echo chamber.
Exactly. And hey, sometimes you just gotta laugh at the absurdity of it all, like cat mayors, come on!
True that. All right, everyone listening, you heard it here first. Think for yourselves, stay curious, and maybe double-check those cat mayor stories just to be safe. You never know.